Wedding Crashers almost got an NC-17 rating, but then they reshot one of the raunchiest scenes. Wedding Crashers hit theaters 20 years ago this week, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind Wedding Crashers starts in LA in the early 2000s, with the movie's producer, Andrew Panay, and of course, a wedding. As Panay told Mel magazine in 2017, "At the time, I was in my 20s getting ready to go to a wedding, and for some reason I was excited. I thought, why am I so excited for this? And the truth was, I thought I might meet a girl." That gave him the idea for a comedy about wedding crashers. He then pitched this idea to screenwriters Steve Faber and Bob Fisher, because he was impressed with their spec script, We're the Millers. Faber and Fisher weren't sure if wedding crashing could sustain a whole movie, but then they thought, what if the women the main characters were pursuing were part of a rich political family like the Kennedys? Fisher had interned in DC in college, and he would crash lobbyist events for free food, and he'd often make up fake backstories for himself when he did this. So all of those ideas combined to form the screenplay for Wedding Crashers. Faber and Fisher then crashed political events in Los Angeles for research. Quote, "We'd line our pockets with saran wrap and leave with our pants stuffed with cold cuts." So then in early 2003, New Line Cinema came on board, and it paid Faber and Fish a mid-six-figure deal for the script. Meanwhile, director David Dobkin was looking for his next project. He had just worked with Owen Wilson on Shanghai Nights, and had previously worked with Vince Vaughn on Clay Pigeons. At the after-party for Shanghai Nights' premiere, he saw Wilson and Vaughn in the same room, and he thought that they should work together. He told Mel, "I swear to God, Abbott and Costello popped into my head." 8 weeks later, his agent sent over the script for Wedding Crashers, and Dobkin knew it was perfect for Vaughn and Wilson. So he signed on to direct the movie in 2004, and then Vaughn and Wilson soon joined him. The director takes credit for adding in more emotion to the script during development. He said the relationship between John and Jeremy wasn't fully fleshed out, but quote, "It's a love story. There's Owen and Rachel, and there's Vince and Owen." New Line's marketing department was apparently worried that the characters were misogynistic because their only goal was to sleep with women at weddings. Dobkin helped convince New Line otherwise by explaining that the characters loved everything about weddings and that they make weddings better by being there. Vince Vaughn said on the DVD commentary track, just the title of the movie won him over. Quote, "I remember just hearing the title of the movie, Wedding Crashers, it made me laugh. I would say, Owen and I get to go crash weddings, and people would just start laughing." So then it came time to cast the rest of the movie. Dobkin had trouble finding Sack until Bradley Cooper came in. Cooper was best known for the TV show Alias at the time, and despite the fact that Dobkin had a rule, never hire someone in the room, Cooper was so good, he hired him in the room right after his audition. Isla Fisher, an Australian actress virtually unknown in the US at that time, was really intimidated at her audition. She recalled sitting next to Shannon Elizabeth and Anna Paquin in the waiting room, and she told Mel, "Every girl that went in before me was famous. I remember sitting in the room and thinking, I shouldn't really bother." But Fisher nailed her audition. The casting director called it the funniest audition ever. Dobkin had then seen more than 200 actresses for the other female lead, Claire, but he couldn't find the right performer. So New Line set up a meeting and said, "This is your deadline to pick someone because the casting process has gone over budget." The very last person Dobkin saw before the deadline was Rachel McAdams. Quote, "She was the only person that could do the role right." Jane Seymour, meanwhile, was coming off Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, and she thought because the Wedding Crashers role was so raunchy, that audience is going to hate me for doing this. But she thought to hell with it and submitted her tape anyway. And Dobkin says that's exactly why he cast her. "I remember watching her audition tape. My girlfriend walked in the room and said, 'Oh my God, you can't do that. You can't have her do that role.' The minute she said I couldn't, I knew Seymour was the right person." The casting department made a long list of big names for Senator Cleary, including Harrison Ford. But when Dobkin saw Christopher Walken's name on the list, he thought he'd be perfect if they could get him. New Line, meanwhile, wanted a more comedic actor and pitched Burt Reynolds. But Dobkins won that argument too, and they went out to Walken and he signed on. Keir O'Donnell's girlfriend had auditioned for the Isla Fisher role, and when he saw the script, he instantly knew he could play Todd. So he got his manager to land him an audition, and within 3 days, he was cast. O'Donnell's girlfriend then ended up playing one of the girls with Will Ferrell at the funeral. By the way, they had to beg Will Ferrell to appear as Chaz in the movie, and they didn't confirm him up until the day before shooting his scenes. Dobkin says Nick Cage was the backup or maybe on a wish list for that part. Senator John McCain and Democratic strategist James Carville cameo in the film. McCain was actually criticized for this cameo because he had previously attacked Hollywood for marketing R-rated movies to teenagers. Dobkin then made detailed preparations during pre-production that were kind of unusual for a comedy. He rehearsed with the cast for 3.5 weeks prior to shooting and allowed them to finesse their dialogue and point of view. Vince Vaughn said, "We went through the entire script and there wasn't a scene that we didn't go through and change." And Dobkin also storyboarded every single shot in the movie. Wedding Crashers was originally going to shoot and be set in Cape Cod, but because they had to film in the spring, this wasn't practical, so Dobkin moved production to DC and Maryland, which was a natural fit for the script. New Line then set the budget at $40 million, and filming began March 22nd, 2004. The Cleary wedding reception was shot at the Inn at Perry Cabin in St. Michael's, Maryland. The Cleary family house was shot at the Ellenborough Estate in Easton, Maryland. The opening montage took 2 weeks to shoot total, and New Line apparently wasn't thrilled it was taking so long. But according to the filmmakers, it was crucial in setting the tone for the movie, and also helped get the actual wedding crashing out of the the way to satisfy the title, which then allowed them to move into the bulk of the story. Some of the transitions in the montage were done practically. They'd stage one wedding on one half of a hotel conference room, and then a different wedding on the other half, so the camera and main characters could quickly switch back and forth. The montage was always set to the song Shout, and they even played it on set when filming. There was some improvising allowed on set after they shot the scenes how they were written. Cinematographer Julio Macat says 50% of the time those ad-libs ended up in the film. The dinner where Gloria feels Jeremy under the table was especially hard to shoot. They filmed it over 4 long days, and at first they used a prosthetic for Jeremy, but then in post the editor flagged to Dobkin that shot would make the movie NC-17, so they went back during reshoots and they toned it down to what you now see in the film. Also, the intimate scene with Jane Seymour and Owen Wilson in the bedroom was apparently very awkward for those two actors to shoot as well. Christopher Walken went slightly method with his character's cold parenting style. Every day he would carpool with Keir O'Donnell to set, but he wouldn't speak a word to him. The painting that Todd gives Jeremy was Owen Wilson's idea. It was originally going to be a painting of something else, but the day before they were supposed to shoot that scene, Owen suggested it should be Vince in the Garden of Eden. So an art department crew member stayed up all night and painted just that. But sadly, no one knows where the original painting is today. They only had Will Ferrell on set for one day. They shot the cemetery scene in the morning and the interior at his mom's house in the afternoon. Ferrell made the crew laugh so hard, you can see the camera shaking. And then his appearance at the end of the film was added later during reshoots because his character was so popular during test screenings. And speaking of the movie's ending, it was changed substantially from what was originally scripted. The movie was originally going to end with John and Jeremy crashing Claire and Zach's wedding, but then it was changed instead to John crashing Jeremy and Gloria's wedding. The film wrapped in late spring 2004 after just 52 shooting days. In post-production, Dobkin clashed again with New Line over the film's rating. The studio wanted to drop it down to PG-13, and the director considered that for a moment, but then realized they'd have to cut the 2 funniest scenes in the movie, so he pushed back, and the movie held its R rating. But because of that, the studio wasn't expecting it to be a big hit. Wedding Crashers opened on 2,925 screens on July 15th, 2005. It did $32 million opening weekend, landing at number 2 behind Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It would eventually hit number 1 at the box office in its 3rd weekend in theaters. It would go on to gross a massive $209 million domestic and $288 million total worldwide, more than 7 times its budget. And that made it the 6th biggest movie of 2005 in the US, and the first R-rated comedy ever to gross more than $200 million domestic. The film would then earn an additional $145 million from home video sales. Critics were mostly positive on Wedding Crashers. Today, 75% of the 185 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. It won 3 MTV Movie Awards, including Best Movie. In 2015, Entertainment Weekly named it the 21st most quotable movie since 1970, and the term Stage 5 clinger, which was invented by the film's writers, has become a common phrase. Wedding Crashers and The 40-Year-Old Virgin are both credited with reviving R-rated comedies in theaters. Dobkin would later direct Maroon 5's video for Sugar, which was inspired by Wedding Crashers. In 2007, the creators of the movie produced a reality TV show called The Real Wedding Crashers, but NBC canceled it after just 4 episodes. And over the last 10 years, there have been on and off plans for a sequel. Writers Van Robichaud and Evan Susser were working on it at one point, but as of 2022, the project is dead. In 2024, Vince Vaughn said a sequel is always a possibility, but it's a matter of the story being right for the characters. And if you've made it to the end of this video, drop a meatloaf in the comments.